In December this year, I did a creative challenge. I had treated myself to an art supply advent calendar for the very first time, and in case you haven't heard about these, the idea is basically that every day in December until Christmas, you open a lid and reveal a random art supply. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to see if I could create something every day with a random art supply I got from my advent calendar? In this video, I will show you all of the art supplies I got and all of the creative work that I did for this challenge. I made a total of 12 original artworks, 8 sticker designs, 8 greeting card designs, and 1 bookmark. My name is Alex, I'm a professional artist. Welcome to my channel. Inside the calendar was a broad range of art supplies from different brands, including acrylics, fine liners, markers, pastels, watercolors, colored pencils, writing pens, and a few totally surprising items that I had never guessed would be in there. For example, there was a pen loop, a notepad, and even some modeling clay. I was mostly interested in the art supplies and less interested in supplies used for writing, lettering, and note-taking. So some days, for different reasons, I simply decided to create something else, something that was not prompted by the art supply that I found in my advent calendar. On the 1st of December, I was super excited to open the first lid. Behind it was a small tube of red acrylic paint, and almost immediately I decided to do some kind of collage. But the tricky part of this challenge, at least for me, was to keep things very simple. I have a full-time job, so my time and energy are both very limited, and it can be so easy for me to get all of these cool ideas about all the things that I could make, and suddenly I'll have a whole project on my hands that I definitely cannot finish in one day. So with that in mind, I went with a predetermined theme for this entire challenge. Christmas was the obvious choice, and for the sake of simplicity, I also chose some lighter subject matters. And so, on the first day, I made a Christmas bulb collage. Something that I like to do in my art style is to play a lot with shape and create a very wonky look. I like to bend or break straight lines, create corners where there aren't necessarily any, and just intentionally create imperfections to make my visual expression very playful and fun. Back in the day, at the start of my art career, I used to be super precise and meticulous and lean more towards realism in my art for a long time. But over time, I kind of grew tired of the complexity. It felt so limiting. So when I broke away from that, it was very liberating. It was a big break for me in my artistic development, and it also made art a lot more free, intuitive, and enjoyable to me. On the second day of the challenge, I found an acrylic marker in my advent calendar. And at first, I wasn't super impressed by this because I had tried some acrylic markers in the past by the very same brand, and I didn't really like them. I didn't like the look of the brush strokes or the feel of the brush tip, but this particular marker turned out to be a gem in disguise. It had a soft brush tip with a really sharp point as opposed to the other ones I tried before, and using it was actually pretty great. I used it to create another collage, and this time of hollies. I had some green and red painted paper left over from the day before, which was perfect for this. And later in the challenge, I turned these holly designs into stickers. It was a bit tricky to get the printer to get all of the colors and textures right, but I think it turned out all right in the end. And also, after I played around with the acrylic marker, I found myself considering to get a white one in the future. I realized that it would be a great tool for creating opaque highlights and details in my mixed media work. I like using a white gel pen a lot, but there are definitely times when an acrylic marker would be way better. The next day, I found a fine liner with bright pink ink and a tip of 0.3 in my advent calendar. I loved the color of the ink, but initially I didn't really have a good idea of what to do with it. I generally prefer to use thicker fine liners and brush pens, and also the ink was a bit on the lighter side, so it wouldn't look super good as an outline if I colored the drawing after. And I didn't want to work with just an outline or monochromatically. But after work, I had pretty much decided what I wanted to do with the fine liner, and although I will say that the tip would have worked much better for me if it had been thicker, but I made it work. I made a wintry forest scene under a starlit sky using watercolors and various other pencils beside the pink fine liner. The watercolors I use are super granulating, which creates this kind of rich texture that you can see here in the sky. This might not be my favorite piece out of all the ones I made in December, but I do like the idea of it a lot, and I think that I might do a few more versions of this in the future. On day 4, I found that pen loop that I mentioned before in my advent calendar, which I couldn't really do much with, so I ended up painting something completely unrelated instead with art supplies that I already had. I sketched up a cute little bird holding a Christmas bulb in its beak and painted it with watercolors and gouache on watercolor paper with a rough texture. A few years ago, I started designing and producing my own greeting cards, and this design here was what I had planned to send to friends and family as this year's Christmas card. The Christmas card turned out pretty cute, and I did the lettering by hand in watercolor, and I even printed some graphical elements inside the card too. I also thought the artwork would make a really cute sticker, so a few days later I scanned and edited the artwork and printed a sheet of stickers. December 6 to 7 was a weekend, and I had a bit more time on my hands, and I felt like doing something a bit more complex than I had time for during the weekdays. I got some purple acrylics from the advent calendar, and I decided to create this cozy winter scene here with mixed media and collage. As expected, this took more than just one day to finish, but I didn't want to rush things, and I was also having so much fun with this illustration, so I decided to try and incorporate the art supply behind the 7th lid too. I made another video sharing the entire process for creating this specific illustration, and you can check that out right here if you're curious. Fortunately, behind the 7th lid of my advent calendar was a blue soft pastel that I used to create some texture on the tree trunks. I absolutely love how this artwork turned out. It's one of my favorites from this entire challenge. And it also made a really nice greeting card. I kept it pretty simple and minimalist, allowing the illustration to be the primary focus. Behind the 8th lid of my advent calendar, there was an ice blue eco-line marker. The idea actually took a bit of time to form for this one, but I'd had a lot of fun doing collages lately, and so that's what I decided for this one as well. I made a number of minimalist Christmas trees with acrylics and watercolors, and then I collaged some decorations on top of the tree. I used the eco-line marker to make these light blue Christmas bulbs on the green tree. I can't say it made a huge impact on the final artwork, but that's where the inspiration train took me. Before I went ahead with the collaging, I made sure to scan the original paintings first. I really liked how they looked already without any additional detail on top, and I also wasn't entirely sure of my collage idea or how that would turn out. And in the end, scanning the original layer of paint was a really good decision because I didn't love all of the collages that I made. And when I later turned these Christmas trees into greeting cards, I was able to do a few more designs that didn't have any of the collage work on them. On the 9th of December, I got a really nice watercolor brush from the advent calendar, and on the 10th, I got a tube of silver watercolor. I was really excited to do something with watercolors, although I'm not much into metallic paints. But this was all part of the challenge, and so I made an effort to come up with some idea that could work for me. I made a simple floral design, which I figured could probably also make a really nice greeting card design later. I used the metallic watercolor more like gouache with very little water mixed in so that it was more or less opaque. I painted silver details on the leaves and the stem and around the flowers too. Thematically, this design didn't feel like a fit for another Christmas card, so I went for a more generic kind of greeting card. While I was brainstorming the design of the card, I had a sudden idea to experiment and go wild with the folding and the layout. This is what came out of that. I really liked the result. It felt very creative and unique to me. And the multiple folds allow for an element of surprise for each time the card opens. When I opened the 13th lid of my advent calendar, I gotta admit that my initial reaction was disappointment. It was a super standard black Stabilo pen, and back when I was in school, many of the other kids would use these exact pens for note-taking in class, so when I saw this pen, my mind immediately flashbacked to classrooms and homework, and all of my potential ideas just died completely. But I gave it my best shot anyway. I've worked with a lot of ink and markers in the past, so it felt easy enough to come up with an idea and use the pen just as I would have used any other kind of black marker or brush pen. Now, I will say that this pen didn't create an even cover when I filled out the black areas, not even close. But it was surprisingly fun to use the pen anyway. The messy, uneven cover had a pretty interesting quality to it, which I leaned further into. And it was also super easy to fix the issue later when I scanned it and edited the artwork in good old Photoshop. The final artwork I created on this day, I later turned into yet another Christmas card. And I think that among all the greeting cards I did over this entire challenge, this one might just be my favorite. It just works so well with the red, white, and black and the simple graphical elements inside the card. The lettering on the Christmas card was done by hand with another pen, which I found in my advent calendar on the next day. It was a simple black gel pen meant for writing, and it wasn't necessarily something that I would have bought myself, but it was pretty great for lettering because it allowed for really tiny and precise details. After a few days of making cards and stickers, I decided to do another artwork on the 18th of December. This idea wasn't prompted by the advent calendar, but I really liked the previous artwork that I did and I wanted to do some more in the same series. So here's the design for the front and back of a bookmark. It really is a lot of fun to make your own bookmarks. I'm a person who loves to read, and sometimes I hop between books or read more than one at the same time. And back in the day, I used to never have enough bookmarks, and I ended up using just pretty much anything I could find, like old envelopes, post-it notes, receipts, and even a square paper tissue at times. But nowadays, I make my own bookmarks for my own art, and I have a ton of them just lying around, ready to grab, and it's always such a joy to use them. Toward the end of the challenge, I had planned to go on a trip for a few days, but I didn't want to completely abandon the challenge, so instead I decided to make a bunch of quick and simple sticker designs in the same series as the 2 previous artworks. I got a Sharpie permanent marker in my advent calendar, and this one, it has to be said, I did not like at all. Immediately when I tested it, I noticed that it had a really significant bleed, and even when I used it on high quality marker paper, the bleed was still a big problem, which made it very difficult to do anything with this pencil. So I used the marker only for the very first design, and after that I switched to another black marker. Later, when I came back from my trip, I scanned all the designs I made and turned them into stickers. I really like how they turned out, especially this cute little bird, and I've already put several of these stickers on my sketchbooks. For the last couple of days until Christmas, I didn't have the time to do any more artworks between all the cooking and baking and decorating, but I already knew it was going to be like this going into the challenge. I've said it before and I will say it again. I generally take any kind of art challenge with a big grain of salt. It can be a lot of fun to do an art challenge, but it can also be exhausting and put a lot of pressure on people to hustle and perform, and I just don't think it's worth it like that. Life puts enough pressure on all of us as it is, without any additional pressure we choose to put on ourselves. I really had a blast doing this challenge, but there were also days when I was super tired after work or when I didn't feel inspired by the art supply in my advent calendar, and so I chose to take it easy on those days and do something else, something that felt fun and didn't require a lot of time or energy of me. Either way, by the end of all of this, I've made 12 original artworks, 8 sticker designs, 8 greeting card designs, and 1 bookmark design, and I'm really proud of that. I also posted 1 video a day during this entire challenge, so for those of you who want to check that out, I'll link it right here. Another thing I want to mention regarding this challenge, something that might not be obvious from the outside, but it was actually a bit challenging to keep to an artistic consistency and to really keep to my style throughout this challenge. If you think about it, what makes up an art style and what makes it unique and consistent is several things. On the one hand, there are things like shape language and stylization, and on the other hand, there are things like colors, subjects, and materials. And as you can probably guess at this point, when your materials are going in all these different directions, I mean, this calendar pretty much had it all. As I mentioned, there were acrylics, fine liners, markers, pastels, watercolors, and a lot more. And with all these different kinds of art supplies, it was not an entirely easy task to create visual consistency. But either way, that was not a major topic for this challenge. It was simply to challenge myself creatively and make something with random art supplies and tools that I'd never used before. And on that account, I would say I did pretty well. I'm curious to hear if any of you have ever tried an art challenge similar to this one before. What was your specific challenge and how did you like it? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to check out the full playlist with all of the videos I made for this challenge as well. I appreciate you being here, liking and commenting on this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.